I'm here today to remind you that the love of God is here and the love of God exists. Now, with everything that's going on in the world and in our personal lives and everywhere we turn, I can understand why people would say, it's cliche, to be a Christian and to be saying, oh, God loves you, and to be talking about the love of God. But in reality, the love of God is really what we need. It sounds like something up in the air and far-fetched and not concrete, not based on logic. But if you think about it, love for another human being is a form of problem solving, I would say. Especially since COVID. COVID has really done things to us and done things to the world that put people in a worse position than they were before. And I can speak about how this is by design, but right now I just want to speak on the positive and how we can come up with solutions for ourselves. And what I'm saying is love is a form of a solution. And, it's easy to say that, it's irrational to think this way because the world is so full of hatred. But when the world is full of hatred and we can't find that within ourselves, like, for example, we can't look at someone else's situation or something going on the other side of the globe, let's say, or somewhere else in the world. We can't look at those things and say it's directly affecting me or it's moving me in any way, because we have our own things going on and things like that. So it's not easy to connect with things that are outside of us, that even though it's not directly impacting us, everything affects everybody. But when we can't do this, because it is hard, I will admit, this is when the love of God comes into play. When you are aligned with the love of God, when you allow God to put his love in your heart, you're able to see things from a different perspective. You're able to feel things that you wouldn't naturally feel on your own, because we are going through our own, everybody's in their own world, and that's fine. That is the way of being an individual. That's a natural trait as a human being. But with the love of God, we would really be able to empathize with each other. And from there, I believe that we would come up with new solutions to the world's problems. And we wouldn't have to wait for people outside of us. And when I say us, I'm talking about us as a collective, as a human collective. I'm not talking about, this group, that group, though each group, every person in society, every person in the world has their own set of issues that need resolutions for. But, thinking from the perspective of us, when I say us as the human collective, because we are all human beings, we're all children of God. I believe we are all one community, even though we all have our different, things that we engage in. We have different things about us, things that differentiate us, but our essence is the same and we come from the same source. And I believe that it's natural that when you connect to that source, it gives you another form of energy, and it gives you something greater than yourself. And when I say greater than yourself, it's like when we're in this world and we're just engaging with things that were kind of given to us to engage with, and we're so busy and we have a lot going on in our lives and things like that, it's really hard to connect with a source that's within and that's in the core of who you are, as opposed to all the things that we're just collecting through our senses from the outside world. So when you're connected to that source, which is God in his purest form, or God in his purest way of being, is unconditional love, and that's a part of who we are. And that's a part of where we come from. And I believe that's a part of what sustains us and keeps us going and gives us energy and gives us insight, gives us the ability to empathize and see what's going on around us and say, okay, it may not directly be affecting me, but I can definitely feel, what's happening here in this other situation. And from there, from that point of view and from that feeling, and from that way of seeing things, we'll naturally come up with solutions, like I was mentioning before. We wouldn't need this mass organization or, this group of people or these people who we think that are bigger than us. We won't necessarily need that in order to come up with solutions. We won't have to wait for them. Right now I feel like the world is in dire need. It's like everywhere you look. I don't mean to be like the bad news bearer that's always talking about like the world's problems and like everything that's wrong. I do that because I see that even though I can see good things in the world, of course, there are a lot of good, amazing things happening, but we can't neglect and we can't not pay attention to the bad, because I mean, you can't fix something if you're not aware that it exists. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean that something's not going on. It doesn't mean that it's not affecting you. And if it's not affecting you right now, you don't know how this thing that you're not seeing, that you don't think is important because it's not directly affecting you, you don't see how it'll possibly impact you in the future. And I do believe that everything is interconnected, even though right now you don't see the impact of one thing, but in one way, in a way that you probably can't see it, in the long run may just affect you. And by the time you realize that it affects you, it's too late, because it's so deeply embedded and so deeply, already at play, that you can't reverse it by the time you know that it's a problem. So that's why I like to, unfortunately, talk about the problems and the things that are going on so that we can come up with solutions. And being that the way that society has evolved, and the way, and I guess the cards that we were dealt, and when I say the cards that we were dealt, I don't like for people to think that, oh, God has dealt me a bad card. There's really no such thing, because just because your path doesn't look like, let's say, someone else, or you feel like your path isn't a certain way, does not mean that God granted you a bad card. It's just being perceptive of what your individual path is and where God is taking you and what he's trying to teach you and how you're supposed to evolve in your space and your existence. So that's not where I'm going with it when I say dealt a bad card. But, just because we may feel like we're regular people, we're average people, we're, these individuals who don't, we don't do the big problem solving and things like that. I don't think that's a good way to think, because we are more powerful as a human collective than we give ourselves credit. And this is what I believe, that, people who create most of the world's problems, this is what they know, and this is what feeds them, and this is how they get to decide what problems they're going to create, and they get to decide how they're going to implement their own solutions, regardless of how that's going to affect us, regardless of how we will feel in the long run. Even if right now there are things taking place where it's like you don't think that of the repercussions, but you don't think that it's a big deal. But it's like when you're actually in it, you don't know if it's going to be something that's unbearable for your soul. We're human beings. We were designed to be connected to our creator. God created us. So it's like if someone or something if you create something, you know how it works, you know what it needs, you know how to sustain it. So if we're disconnected from that, it's like there's no way that we'd be able to live to our full capacity. I feel like it may sound like it's like me saying this is going far from where I started, which is talking about the love of God, but this goes directly hand in hand, because the essence of God is love. If God didn't love each and every single one of us, as cliche as it sounds, he would not give us life. He wouldn't put us here on this earth. You would not be watching this video right now. Not saying, this video is the most important thing in your life, but I'm just saying you wouldn't be present right here, right now. That's where I'm going with it. And, regardless of, what you're perceiving, it's like God's love is always there for you to access. And it just takes a little shift in your thinking, and it just takes a willingness and an openness to say, okay, God, I want to see that side of you. What is it that I'm not seeing? If that's something that you feel is foreign to you, this is something that everyone can access. And this is how we can, feel that we have something greater than us, because, us human beings, we are limited. There's only so much that we can do with our own strength. But once we, get back to the space, or get into the space of saying, okay, I'm open to the love of God, and we start seeing differently, and we start empathizing, and we start feeling like we're kind of like strengthened, because from my experience, that's what I see that the love of God does to you. It gives you this strength that I wouldn't say makes you invincible or makes you superhuman, but it gives you this strength that just makes you feel able and capable. And if every one of us were to be in that space where we feel so strengthened, we feel so able, so capable, because we feel like we're connected to a source that's greater than us, you know? Because when you don't feel this thing called love, especially from a source as big as God, you know, the creator, the one who made you, when you're disconnected from that, you start to feel like, you know, you're small, or you feel like you're isolated, you feel like there's not much that you can do about certain things. And that's how I feel like that's how we were manipulated to think. We were manipulated to think that we're isolated from our power source, which is God, which is God's unconditional love, you know, and that we're just, you know, out in the world and we're just figuring it out, you know. And even though some people may be successful, like, it doesn't matter like what your position is, or, you know, what you've obtained or what you've done or anything like that, but it's just like there's just this thing about being disconnected from that source that just makes you feel like you're just a little bit more limited than you actually are. So if we were all to connect with that source of pure unconditional love from our creator, we would feel so strengthened, and we would feel so empathetic towards each other. We would feel so moved by the things that are going on in the world, and we would collaborate in a way that we've never done before as a human race. And we would really take, you know, things into our own hands, or even the things that we can't implement ourselves. We'd be able to say, this is what we want, this is what we see, you know, this is what we deserve as human beings. We won't let people put us on the back burner. Like, for example, there are things going on in different countries where it just breaks my heart, because it's like, you know, these things were supposed to be resolved a long time ago, and I feel like there's the means to do it. You know, we have the numbers, there's the resources to do it, you know, and there's so many things that we can come up with to even do about it. But it's just like people still put us on the back burner. It's like, if it's not trendy, society doesn't talk about it. And I'm not just talking about, like, for example, my birth country, Haiti. Like, we go through that a lot, but it's just everywhere. Like, America's going through things right now, and it's like, you know, the current situation at hand is being put like on the back burner. And it's like, whatever's trendy, that's what we talk about. Whatever's trendy, that's what we, you know, put out in the forefront. That's what we engage in. You know, there are countries all over the world. Everyone's going through something. And I feel like instead of us being frustrated, because sometimes I think about the problems in America and like certain things that are going on that are really unfair and that really don't make any sense for anybody, really. I think about stuff like this, and I think about my country, where I come from, and the things that we've been going through. And a lot of these things that we're all going through are imposed by people who we have believed are somehow greater than us and more powerful than us. And we've even somehow put them on a pedestal equal or greater to God. And it's like, I don't think it's fair for us to continue to just let things unfold how they're unfolding. And it's like, people are going through real things. There are real things happening in our countries. There are real things happening around the world. And it's just like, sometimes it's trendy to talk about X, Y, and Z. So we talk about it, we engage in it, they get us riled up, and then we just leave it there, you know? And I think about like the people where I come from, like they're still going through stuff that's really not fair, because if there are people in charge in government and things like that, by now there's certain policies and certain things that were supposed to be put in place in order for these people to really have a different situation. And that's going on all around the world. And it's just really, it's not fair and it's not right. It's an injustice to us as individual people who come from where we come from and who believe in what we believe in and who deserve what we deserve as children of God. And also, everybody's being put on the back burner, and we're just a story for when it's trendy. And people, you know, who feel like they're so powerful and they are God and this and that, they get to resolve things how they see fit in the way that they see fit, and have no regard for the actual people who they're affecting and who they're so-called helping. So I think we also, just as they feel responsible to be the ones to fix the problems that they cause for whatever agenda that they have, I feel that we also have a responsibility. It's a God-given responsibility for every single human being to feel accountable to what's going on around them. I'm not saying for people to like burn themselves out and worry about, it's like give yourself off to the world and worry about everything that's going on in everyone's personal life and everybody's situation. I'm not saying that. There are people all over the world. There are people everywhere right here in America that are being directly affected by man-made problems that were designed for someone else's agenda. And I think we all have a responsibility as human beings, as children of God. We all have a responsibility to these problems that are happening. It's not to burn yourself out and be so concerned with other people's individual lives. That's not where I'm at with it, because self-preservation is the first law of nature. We always have to, make sure that we're full, we're good, and really look out for ourselves before we can extend ourselves to people. But this is where the love of God comes in. There's something amazing about the love of God. When you connect to that, it gives you an extra power source. It gives you an extra source, and it's cliche. They say, oh, it makes your cup runneth over, but it's true. It's like it fills your cup and then you have extra left over, and you can really look at the world and like really think to yourself, like, what is going on? And, what are we going to do about it? We shouldn't think that, as regular people or everyday people, there's only so much that we can do, and there's certain things that we just don't get involved in. No, there's no difference between me, there's no difference between you, there's no difference between somebody who's on some pedestal that we think is more powerful than us or more powerful than God. We are all the same in essence. And if there are problems and issues going on in the world, we can literally say, you know what, I'm not going to wait on you. We can say, you know what, I'm not going to wait for you to make this thing trendy and to make it a topic, and hopefully, you propose a solution, or you just put something out there that I can engage in that can help the situation. Like, we can literally be like, you know what, I'm tired of you. I'm not going to wait. My country has a problem. America's going through a problem that I see that I don't agree with, and I think that we need to solve it. We can say, Haiti, wherever you're from, the Middle East, wherever you're from, Africa, Asia, wherever, you can literally say, you know what, this is a problem, and I'm not going to wait for you to make it trendy in order for it to be solved. And I'm not going to let you impact my life, my children's life, my future, my children's future. Like, we can literally say this, and we can literally all come together and say, you know what can we do? We can literally collaborate with each other. We have all the technology. You're looking at me right now, through a screen. We have all the technology where we can all reach each other and connect in a way that we could never do before. And I think this is a blessing of God, because technology has evolved so much that there's so much we can do on our own. We literally do not need these people anymore. We can build our own things. We can build our own apps. I'm not saying that we have to take it that far. I'm not saying that it's going to go there. I would love for it to, but if I'm not saying that's where it's at. That's not the message here. But what I'm trying to say is that if we do find it in ourselves to be open to the love of God, because to be honest, I feel like this is why God has allowed a lot of things to unfold and has just allowed certain people to think that they can be God and just destroy our lives and unleash all of these plagues and, weather manipulation, all sorts of things that, you can always look up on your own. And I'm sure that you're a very smart person, and, and even if you don't know, we can always find this information. This information is out there. But it's like, we can literally say that, we're not going to let these people do whatever they want. We have these tools that can really empower us to create things and do things. And if we really want to get something done with the love of God as a strength, with empathy as a strength and not a weakness, because it's like people think that, love, empathy, that's weak. That's how you get like walked over, this and that. No, we can still be wise, because what comes with the love of God is wisdom and all good things that we need for our souls. I feel like this is the place that we need to get to in order to have control over our own lives, control over what goes on in our politics, in our country, and wherever we are, and whatever's going on, around us, because this is our world. This world was not made for a very small percentage of people. This world was made for every single human being that is on the planet. And whatever you're going through, whatever we have going on, if we don't like it, we have God. We do not need a small percentage of people to decide who we are, what we do, how we do it, what problems we have and how they're going to solve it. What if I don't like your solution? I feel like that's where we need to be. And another thing about the love of God is when you have this, it gives you a certain amount of love for yourself. Now, we're human beings. Like, even me, I talk about the love of God, but that doesn't mean that, I don't fall short. It doesn't mean that I don't have moments where I self-sabotage. I self-sabotage a whole lot. But the good thing is that God's love is always there for you to just get back in sync with, because this is our genetic makeup. We're not just human beings with human DNA. We also have a DNA from our Heavenly Father. We are directly connected with our Heavenly Father. The Spirit of God is embedded in who we are as human beings, and we always have access to that. It's just as simple as opening your heart and allowing the one true God. There's so many gods out there, so not to be confusing in this video. The one true God, the highest, the most high God, who you can access through the love of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is the one who came to this world to reveal that, hey, look, there is another side to God. God is loving. God's love is pure. This is the highest form of spirituality that we'll ever obtain in this life. And this is the closest connection that we can have to God. We will fall short. This happens. We are human beings. That's a part of the human existence. We live in a material world. We have these vain material aspects of us, and this is how we exist in the physical realm. Within this material existence, it's like there's a certain balance that we're supposed to find, because to be honest with you, if we don't have those moments where we self-sabotage and we kind of go in and out of the love of God as we are human beings, I think we'll be so evolved and so elevated that, the human race will cease to exist, because we'll just be spiritual beings, but which is another conversation. But while we're here in these physical bodies and, we're having this physical experience, we're going to fall short. We're going to absorb things from the outside world through our senses, and we won't always be aligned with that, which is why God is so much greater, which is why it's good to have that perception and to understand that God is a greater source, because in this existence, we will always fall short. That's just how the material, physical world works, because not only are we spiritual, we are also material. It's just finding that balance. And in order to have this balance, we would have to tap into our source, which is God. We need the love of God, and the love of God is what will really help us as human beings on our planet to really come up with solutions for the problems that we see around us. I believe that there's so many things going on, and we're always being put on the back burner, and there are things happening that are man-made, and it's not fair. And I think that we, should take control over our lives, take control over what goes on around us. Just as some people feel like it's their responsibility and they're greater than God and they're going to cause these problems and fix X, Y, and Z, we also have a responsibility to ourselves and to our fellow human being around us and to this world that God gave us. God gave us a paradise, and it's up to us to first individually work on ourselves and really allow God to come in our hearts and do something in here, do something in our hearts that's going to really shift our perspective about ourselves, about each other, about the world around us. And then from that space, we can extend ourselves to others. We can extend ourselves to the world. We can look around us and come up with solutions that'll really help each other and help us to live in a better world. At this point, I feel like this is what God is really saying. God is saying that it's our world and things are on our terms. Nobody's greater than us and nobody's greater than God. The greatest force to ever exist is God himself, and God wants to extend himself to us, wants us to be open to him so that he can come in our hearts and do something new, something different, so that we can get better results, so that we can be really aware, because with God's love comes wisdom, so that we can be aware, so that we can be perceptive, so that we can have discernment to see what's really going on around us, so that we can create a world that's better than how we found it, and we can create a future for the people to come where we can be proud and say that we built something great and we did it on our terms, and we did it just in a new way, and we made history in a way that the world has never seen before. It sounds like something that's far-fetched, and some people might see that, this is something that this is so like idealistic, but this is possible, and we all have this potential within us, and we all have God's DNA just as we have human DNA from our parents. We are all extensions of God. It's like, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter what religion you've been raised in, no matter what you've engaged in, no matter what subgroup you identify with, we all have, things going on, and we're all human. God created each and every single one of us, no matter what happened along the line to really separate us and create all of these differences. But the common ground is that we are all children of God, and God loves us all so much. And the difference between God loving you and not loving you is just a perception. And you get that perception of God truly loving you by opening your heart space. The heart space is something that's a bit feared, because I understand it's a crazy society, but with opening the heart space, God also grants wisdom, and that's something we can all ask for, so that we can balance this thing called love, and we can do things that are really going to edify our souls and edify each other, and really help us to do something new and better for the world and for ourselves.